Well, there's a lot of things on my list here which I could potentially go into in this video, but for the avoidance of making it 2 hours long and starting to talk about Hamilton's future and Lando's drive and McLaren being world champions, congratulations to McLaren for that. We're just going to talk about, as best as possible, I'm going to stick to the driver coach and driver mentor side of things as much as possible and the implications moving into 2025. So if you're interested in what my thoughts are, definitely keep watching. Welcome back to the channel, guys. Now, look, the first thing we obviously need to talk about is the start and the incident at turn one between Max Verstappen and Oscar Piastri. So Max gets a great launch. Obviously, Max has had great launches like of late. The Qatar launch was also, I called it out as being just an excellent launch. And I'm talking about reaction time, revs, throttle mapping, throttle shape, clutch, bite point, all of the technical stuff, tire temperatures. All of that was tick, tick, tick. And again, Max got an amazing launch straight up the inside of, was it Carlos Sainz, I believe, on the right-hand side. So the question now at this point was the move on? Was he entitled to have a lunge up the inside of Oscar Piastri? I think from Max's point of view, if I can give you an insight into what he might have been thinking, it was that probably the braking zone was deeper and longer than what he thought. Like, now, Oscar was one gear and straight in, so the corner was much faster than what Max anticipated on turn one, lap one. That's something you can do into a much heavier braking zone, like a hairpin or something, because the braking zone's more drawn out. You can get up there, but, like I say, Oscar was the one downshift and straight into that corner, so he was turning in very early and kind of caught Max by surprise. I'm not sure from Max's point of view, like, was this... did he feel like, stuff it, I've got nothing to lose here? Or I'm not sure what gave Max the indication that this move was on. And that's what I'm trying to and I'm thinking out loud for you guys here, because I've just come off watching the race and I haven't had a chance to fully self-reflect on it. So what would have given Max the idea that this move was on? I mean, the fact that he got a good start, maybe. The fact that there was space up the inside, potentially as well. But it was ambitious, and it was the second mistake of his weekend. That we've spoken before about Max's weaknesses, and we've said, look, Max's strengths, there's pages of them. Like, you can write a book on how many strengths Max has, and including the start, for example, which he absolutely nailed. And then there's the racecraft, which is normally better than what it was in terms of attack and defense, and then wet weather and his mindset, his focus, ability to collect points, and like ability to react and drive in variable conditions and predict the grip before he gets there. Like, he's got pages of strength. And I've said since 2023, I only know of 2 weaknesses. Now, you guys, a lot of you guys, Max fans, you guys hanged me for those weaknesses, which are holding true. You're going to have to go back through my videos if you're new to the channel in the last two weeks. But since 2023, I've been able to identify and confidently put my finger on 2 weaknesses, which are, number one, the mistakes that could potentially be drawn out of Max Verstappen when he gets frustrated and or emotional and or impatient. That's the first weakness that I've seen crop up in his driving. I thought we saw that again in Mexico, guys. I know you guys are going to come out and say, but he was calculated and it ruined Lando's race. No, not really. I mean, if Lando couldn't get past Max in that race, what makes you think he's just going to cruise up and pass Carlos Sainz, Mr. Race Control Management out front? Mr. I've not got 1 lap good enough for pole position. I've got 2 laps good enough for pole position. So those are the guys that don't know. Those are the Drive to Survive generation. So if you're new here from Drive to Survive, sorry, I don't want to put you in that category if you don't deserve to be in that category. But there was nothing to suggest that, like, Lando was just going to cruise. Like Martin Brundle always says, closing is one thing, like catching is one thing, passing is another. So anyway, I digress a little bit, because I don't think Lando would have. There's no guarantee that Lando wins that race, right? But there was a guarantee that it cost Max Verstappen points, because the steward said, here's a 10-second penalty and here's another 10-second penalty, and you're going to fall behind the Mercedes. And I think that cost Max in the order of 10 to 13 points. Some other person that's done all the calcs on it probably knows better, and I'm sure will correct me in the comments. But look, I feel like from a specialist technical coach and mentor point of view, we saw that in Mexico. It was coming off the back of Austin. There was all that talk about the inside and Max's driving style and dirty tactics and running people off the road. You know, that was playing on his mind leading into Mexico. Lando, great move around the outside, earned the right to some space and respect. Max pushed him off. And then the initial immediate reaction from Max, without thinking about it, without talking to anyone about it, without being in the middle of battle, in the heat of the moment, was to just chuck the car at Lando, the same way that he did here in turn 1, lap 1 against Oscar Piastri. So, like I say, I'll digress a little bit, but errors in Max Verstappen when he's frustrated and or emotional is one of the only weaknesses that I've seen. The other, and that's on the mental side. The other weakness that I've seen is on the technical side, and it's got to do with the lines that he takes in certain types of corners and how he looks after his front tires. And it was interesting to see Max radioing in. I think it was in the first stint, but I quote here that he radios in, "My front tires are getting too hot." So that was the other weakness that started to crop up again. Now, we've seen that this year as well. We saw it in Hungary when he's just running out of front tires. One of his quotes was, "I'm -5 brake bias and this thing still doesn't budge and turn," right? So that was in Hungary. Netherlands, he ran out of front tires and Lando just destroyed him. And we were talking about how good Lando's drive was, and of course it was a good drive. But Max's weakness in those long corners, constant radius, increasing radius, and decreasing radius, all of which you have in Netherlands, really highlighted this issue, popped it up there again. We saw it again in, where else did we see it recently? Qatar, sprint race. He said he ran out of front tires. And then we see it again here in Abu Dhabi. He says, yeah, he radios in, "My front tires are getting too hot." So just to conclude, they're the only two weaknesses that I know. Now, before you guys come at me in the comments and say, "No, Max is perfect, this, that," you don't know what you're talking about. Like I said, mate, there are pages of strengths. And if Max is a human, like we all are, with blood, sweat, and tears, he has weaknesses. And I'm doing my best to highlight them to you. And it's supported by what we see here in front of us. So, look, I don't have a bias towards any driver, guys. I'll be honest. I'm Australian and Italian. I like Ferrari. I like Oscar. But, you know, that's not here nor there when I'm talking about Max Verstappen's strengths and weaknesses. So, like I say, I'm doing my best to highlight it to you guys. What I have seen and looked at, I've watched every lap Max Verstappen's done in Formula One. Those are the only two that I know of. And that's pretty good. Like when you look at Lando's weaknesses, well, there's a lot more on the mental side. Like we'd be here all day if we were talking about Lando's weaknesses. There's starts, there's attack, there's defense, there's mentality, there's mindset issues, there's self-confidence. And again, this is not a crack at Lando, but I'm just juxtaposing, you know, you could take Oscar and look at his weaknesses, and it's lap time and it's qualifying under pressure and this and that and certain tracks not being able, like out in Q1 in Mexico. So guys, just take it from me. Those are Max's weaknesses, and that's pretty good. Like that's as good as it's going to get. So interesting to see those two pop up here tonight in Abu Dhabi. So I don't know, like, yeah, I mean, I don't know how else to say that to you guys for you guys to understand it. I know that it triggers an emotional reaction in the Max Verstappen fans who come out and say, "What are you talking about? And it was calculated by Max in Mexico, and that George didn't get the upper hand here emotionally." And, you know, there's always going to be those people that don't quite get it or don't want to believe it's true. But look, like I say, guys, I'm presenting logical arguments that are supported by facts. So interesting to see then that Piastri radios in. What was his radio message? I'm trying to find it here on my notes. It said something like, "Yep, that was the move of a world champion," or something like that. So I thought that was a classy move from Oscar because he didn't get frustrated. And here's the thing, guys. Max Verstappen's not Oscar Piastri in terms of how stoic and how emotionally stable Oscar is. Like, if you don't believe me, you want to look at emotionally stable, it's Oscar Piastri. He definitely has that, right? Now, Oscar doesn't have Max's lap time. So again, these people are different, right? We're all human. We all got our strengths and weakness profile. But this was one of Oscar's strengths here to say, like, he didn't get emotional. He didn't react. He just kind of, he just said, yeah, that, like, he was not very impressed. and he was kind of having a cheeky stab at the credibility of Max Verstappen as a 4-time world champion, to say, is that really what a world champion is all about? Like, is that how sport should be represented? I'm trying to give you guys an insight into what Oscar would be thinking. Like, that's not a classy move. That's not the move of a world champion. That's garbage. So, of course, I agree with Oscar on that one. I don't think the move was good at all. I don't think it was on. And I'm not sure what led to it, other than the fact that he got a good start and he went for a gap, and it was a misjudgment on Max's part. So then Max Verstappen gets the 10-second penalty. I think that was fair. There's not much, like, what else are you going to give him? I think 5 wouldn't have been sufficient enough. And then Oscar obviously comes out and has his own clumsy moment behind Franco Colapinto. And I think that one was more on the side of stupidity than malice. I think Max is not stupid, so I lean that one more towards he messed it up, and he knew he messed it up. Whereas I think with Oscar, that one just caught him out. When he's following Franco, he can't see the breaker boards. He doesn't know where the 150, the 100 is. So I think that was silly from Oscar to not be keeping an eye on the breaker boards and just follow Franco the whole way down. At one point, you've got to pull out and get your bearings again. So obviously he's lost front downforce as well as a result of being behind Franco there as well, and just locked the front brakes and slid into him. So very clumsy from Oscar. Now, did that one deserve 10 seconds? Maybe not, because it was more on the clumsy side. I'll probably chalk that one up to 5 seconds. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments. Was Oscar Piastri's penalty a fair one? Okay, so one of the other technical driver insights that I can give you guys was there was a lot of overtakes that were happening down the first DRS zone into the turn 6 and 7 chicane, if you want to call it a chicane. And then after that, they were getting repassed down into the turn 9 long corner. Now, the play, therefore, was to not overtake into the turn 6 and 7 chicane. It was just to sit behind nice and close. And then when you come out of the turn 6 and 7 chicane, then pin it, open the DRS, make the move, and keep the move. Now, the first 2 people I saw to work that out was interesting. It was Max, firstly, and I'm not sure on what lap or what driver, but I do recall Max, like, you know, he was cruising down the straight, and you would think he was going to attack. I can't remember what car and what lap, sorry guys, but it's on my notes here. I did see Max not attack when I know Max could have attacked. So Max was the first one to work it out, and then George was the second one. I do have it written down. George's one was on Pierre Gasly on lap 27. He chose not to attack in the turn 6 and 7 chicane and chose to attack into the long corner of turn 9. So those are the 2 guys that worked that out first. As the race started unfolding, you know, then the engineers start seeing this thing happen on the pit wall. They start radioing the drivers, telling them what to do. You know, all the other drivers just eventually work it out. Maybe it takes them a little bit longer. But I just thought I'd call that out to you guys, as those that were switched on were Max Verstappen and George Russell, and they worked it out first. So that was interesting. Let's talk about Charles Leclerc's first race. So his first stint and start, and his lap 1 was excellent. He said later that it was like, well, I'm starting last. I got nothing to lose. I'm going to just dive up the inside and up the outside. And it was a great first stint from Charles Leclerc. He was driving some beautiful tight lines and early turn-ins into the turn 5 hairpin / long corner, if you want to call it that, and into the turn 9 long corner of increasing radius as well. So those are the 2 long corners that we have on the track. They're the ones that are going to damage the outside front right tire. So with Leclerc driving those early turn-in / tight lines, getting into the apex earlier, not dragging that front right all the way around the corner, that was keeping his tires alive. He actually had pretty good pace in that first stint, despite all the traffic and all the overtakes and everything. So Lewis Hamilton was the only other one that I saw driving that with that early turn-in / tight line into those 2 corners as well. And I say early turn-in / tight line because it was a combination of both. Yeah, Hamilton slightly a step inside of the extremities, like the full track width and racing line that Max is normally on. So coming in from slightly step in, and he's turning in earlier to dive into the apex earlier as well. So there's a combination of 2 techniques going on there. And Leclerc and Hamilton were the only 2 guys that I saw that. We've seen this before, guys. Leclerc was doing this trick in Monza to extend that hard tire and get that towards the end. And with Lewis, that's just his normal modus operandi. That's how he normally drives. So that's the one-handed backhand that I keep talking about. That's not many other drivers on the grid have this technique or know about this. So I'm not sure who taught it to Charles. I've seen Franco do it a few times in Austin as well. He was competing for fastest lap in Austin, and I think he was driving tight lines through the direction change of turn 7 and turn 8. And I've called that out on this channel in the Austin video itself, I believe. I hope I did. But yeah, it's like this is not something common amongst the drivers. Now, there was a shot where Hamilton was chasing George within the final few laps, and there's a shot where they were head on, and you could just see how early Lewis was diving into that apex, finding time on entry, and George was more like turning, waiting, seeing, and then trying to line up a good throttle, a nice hard early throttle introduction on exit to try to get down the straight. The problem with that is I think that ruins your front right tire a little bit more and just delays when you can get on throttle as well. And there's also less grip outside a little bit further. Remember, the track's significantly wide at the apex, so you don't want to go out too far and collect all that rubbish. By Lewis diving in early and getting in early, he's kind of more aligned to where the track grip and cambers are. So I definitely prefer Lewis's approach. But what I wanted to tell you guys was it was interesting that Martin Brundle in commentary says, wow, look at the extra grip that Lewis Hamilton has. So even Martin Brundle, and look, it doesn't surprise me, guys, because like I said in one of my other videos, the guys that are in the sport, sometimes it's hard to read and judge what's happening from the inside. Like, I feel like I almost have an advantage from the outside and just being able to see everything and share it with you guys. It was interesting to see Martin Brundle say, wow, look how much grip he's got into that corner. He was shocked at what he saw, but that's just the result of Lewis Hamilton diving into the apex early and doing Lewis Hamilton things. Like, yeah, he had more grip at that time, but that's Lewis's normal driving style and normal line into a long corner such as turn 5 or turn 9. So don't be surprised to see that moving forward. That's one of Lewis Hamilton's strengths, is the ability to drive in dirty air and look after the outside front tire, look after the tires and get into the corners earlier. That's pretty much Lewis Hamilton's DNA. So I thought I'd call that out as well. And if you do get a chance to have a look at that or find some shots of that, it's definitely worth checking out. Okay, let's talk about race strategy. Hamilton was the only one that kicked off the race on the hard compound tire. I think that was the play. You know, from his position, there was not much else you would want to do. I mean, Leclerc started on the medium and went pretty well as well, so maybe that was an option. I think the hard is the more conventional strategy, just because off the start everyone's all, not everyone's not executing the medium pace like they should. There's all this attack and defense happening and people driving around the outside and up the inside and people touching. And you want to start on the hard tire because you're not going to be able to use the full extent of your medium compound tire anyway. So I think that was a good play. Now, Leclerc pits on lap 21. And I haven't looked at the lap times or anything, guys, at this point. But my racing IQ tells me the way Leclerc was going in that stint, like he was happy as Larry. Like I would have left him out at least another 5 laps. I'm not sure why they pulled him in. Like in my opinion, there was no reason to pull him in. I guess maybe they were thinking to undercut George, but Leclerc was going to get him one way or another. So I'm not sure why they pulled him in when he seemingly was quite happy out there. Now, look, I'll have to go through his lap times and maybe we'll do that in the telemetry and have a look together. So let's jump over to the telemetry now and have a look at that together. Hopefully you can see that on the screen in front of you. So we've got Leclerc and Russell, and this is their race traces. And what I'm looking for here is, was there a need to pit Leclerc on lap 21? Was there a tire drop off or any sort of indication that like we needed to pull him in? Now, look, the guys on the pit wall, they got so much more information in terms of traffic and where they can pull him back out and put him into and what lap times he can come out and run and so on. But I just want to know, was there a need to pull him in when he was doing such a good job? So here's what I'm looking at, the medium compound tires to start the race. And this is Russell in aqua. And this is when they pitted Leclerc, he was behind Russell. So I'm curious to see like what the lap time difference was. And this is Leclerc obviously in red. Now, most of the time here, after this lap, which is lap 12. So from lap 12 onwards, Leclerc is smashing out laps that are much quicker than George Russell. So like I say, this is the pit stop lap where Leclerc's time spikes there. And then George pits a few laps later. And, I guess that was my question. Why? So there's a lap here, like, for example, where Leclerc did a 29.5 and Russell did a 29.9. So Leclerc was 4 tenths better off. So there's that. And it's like, well, what's the need to pit the driver? So I'm not sure about that, to be honest. This is a really interesting difference in lap time at that point in the race. So you see Russell here with massive top speed. I'm not sure if he has DRS at this point, but there's a massive top speed advantage. All of the straights that Mercedes finding a lot of top speed, and then bang, from this point onwards, the delta just goes in Leclerc's favor. So all of the lap time being found in this portion of the lap. And this is, you can see on the track dominance, that final sector, the long corner and all the twisty stuff where Leclerc just found heaps more time. So I'm not sure, guys, if that was a theme moving forward, but I just wanted to check, was Leclerc falling off? Like, why the need to pit him at that point? I don't know. I just felt like he could have gone another 5 or 10 laps, hung out. Maybe at that point you wait for a safety car or something. I don't know. Let me know what you guys think in the comments below. I just think that was a little bit early. Okay, so now we need to talk about Lando Norris and McLaren, the new Constructors World Champions. Now, look, good job by Lando. Obviously, he's converted the race. He's converted pole position into the race win. And look, that's not always straightforward. He made it look straightforward because he did a good job. It's not always straightforward. You've got to execute for good starts. You've got to make good strategy calls. You've got to avoid some debris that we had on the track down at turn 6 and 7. You've got to react to any flags that, caught him out in Qatar. So whilst we didn't have all of the tests, Lando did a good job. So that's the sort of conversion that we're looking for. It was very George-esque in Las Vegas, just controlling the race out front. Clean air is beautiful and good start and that sort of thing. Now, look, my only criticism of both George and Lando when they got the pole was that they didn't line their cars up and take a defensive posture off the line and shoot to the inside as quickly as possible and claim the inside. And what I've always said on this channel, what you want to do is you've got pole position, but it's on the racing line. And you don't want to leave the inside open because things like what Max Verstappen did on Oscar Piastri can happen. You want to trade your pole for the inside as quickly as possible, and no one's going to drive around you at turn 1, lap 1. It's not going to happen. So I'm looking for Lando to do this more often. You should really be doing it like as near as makes no difference every single race from what I can see. Maybe there'll be special circumstances where it's not favorable to do that, but I'm looking for Lando to do that. So whilst I think he executed a good race, a near perfect race, that would be something that I'd like to build into his driving if I was coaching him, to say, prioritize the inside, get to the inside as quickly and as early as possible. Because if Oscar gets a slightly better launch, he's straight up the inside of Lando into turn 1 and it's game over. Whereas if Lando shoots across to the inside and Oscar gets a good launch, then Oscar has no choice but to go around the outside and you can still keep the lead. It's all good. So that's just a call out that I'd probably give to both George and Lando, who took pole positions in Vegas and this one here in Abu Dhabi as well. I think it's good for Lando moving into 2025 to have picked up this win, like a lights to flag win. It'll be great for his confidence. He's going to have a great off season. He's going to be thinking now about a world championship. He's going to be hopefully preparing for a world championship, and what that would look like for a driver in Lando's position surely must be to go over all of the races with either a race engineer or and the specialist technical driver coach and mentor as well, to say what happened in some situations and what could we have done differently to increase the chances of success. I'll give you an example. In Austria, for example, I think on lap 62, dives up the inside of Max Verstappen and he stays on the track and he makes the overtake. Now, Max goes off track and keeps the lead. Now, according to the rules in that situation, 99% of the time, the stewards are going to tell Max to give that place back because he kept a position off the track and gained the lasting. That's the lasting advantage. But Lando didn't give the time for that penalty to happen. And one lap later, he starts attacking Max again. So I feel like it was a mistake to keep attacking. Once you've done that hard work and you've made the successful overtake and Max has gone off track and Max has kept a place off track, you just chill out, bro. Like you're Gucci. You're all good. You've done the hard work. You can just relax and, trust the rules, trust the regs at some point as well. So he starts attacking, which I think puts Lando's car in unnecessary risk. And then when he does start attacking, he starts to attack around the outside, and that's not what worked the lap before. The lap before, you snuck up the inside of Max. So starting to attacking around the outside, you know, Max obviously moving across, under braking, they come together, and Lando's the one that finishes that race worse off from a points paying point of view. And those are the things you want to reflect on in the offseason and say, what could I have done differently? Was a penalty coming my way? Should I have been taking a more professional, more mature approach? You know, should we have discussed it on the radio? Like, what were the chances of me getting that place back? What I said I would have been doing is just let Max go. It's all good, but save your battery, save your tires, do your fuel saving or whatever you need to do. Get that car in a position so that when you get the lead back again, mate, you can just bolt and just check out of that situation, because Max is then going to have DRS and want to start attacking you. So those are the sort of things and sort of little details and more professional, more mature mindset that I'm going to be looking for in Lando Norris. Another thing he might want to reflect on is the way he approaches the flags. For example, in Baku, he got a flashing white flag down the bottom of turn, I think it's 14 in Baku. He got a flashing white, and then he lifted out of the throttle and gave that flashing white too much respect. And then it went out by the time he got there. And I made the point at the time, well, why is he reacting to a flag that's down the road when he's not in that active zone yet? You know, that white flag went out by the time he went through it. So then around the corner, he finds the slow Alpine, finds a flashing yellow down the road. But by the time he enters into that zone, it's changed and become a flashing green. So actually it didn't drive through a flashing yellow that I could see. So those are the details which you'll want to brush up on. And then maybe on the track walks, take more note of where the boards are, just so they're second nature when he sees them in the race proper. And just maybe get a map and just draw where they are, just little things just to make it easier for you in the race. But also one other takeaway would be to attack the flags. You know, if it's flashing yellow, you should be able to attack that flag and lift only when you're in that zone. And that gives the opportunity for that flag to change its color. So that's one of the, I'm giving you guys into an insight into some of the things he could be working on to trade being talented to become a champion in 2025. Preparation and hard work is going to be what sits in the middle of that. Obviously, Hamilton, a mega job, mega drive to sign off with Mercedes. I think that would be great for him, gives him confidence moving into Ferrari. There's a video on what Lewis Hamilton needs to do moving into 2025 at Ferrari. I'll put that in the description of this video. But essentially, it's to maybe just be more adaptable in his driving style and a different mindset, a different mentality that takes the race operations in his own hands and empowers him to make the strategy calls, as opposed to leaning on the race engineers at Ferrari to make the strategy calls. I don't think you're going to get favorable outcomes across a championship season if you do that and take that path. And obviously Carlos Sainz ending on a high as well. I think he drove well. They put together a good weekend. So I think that'll be good for his confidence moving into 2025 as well. And probably the only question mark will be how Max is feeling after that race. Now, look, I haven't heard any of the interviews at this point. I'll be keen to hear what he says, why he went for that move, and maybe we'll revisit some of the comments. Maybe I'll revisit some of you guys' comments in the comment section. Maybe after I hear from Max, I might change my opinion or see. But at the moment, it looks like it was optimistic, it was clumsy, it was unprofessional. It was not four-time champion worthy, you know, and that's a shame. So I'll be keen to hear what Max says and what's his mindset therefore going into 2025. Is it like I've done nothing wrong, I need to keep doing what I'm doing? Or is it like, I did a good season, I became world champion, but if next year the cars are closer, I'm going to need to brush up on these areas where I think I could have done a better job. And in my opinion, they are the frustrations and the emotions, just keeping that more in check, taking the Oscar Piastri approach, and the front tires that he's going to need to sort out in the long corners. I hope you guys enjoyed this video. Thanks for being with the channel this season. Let me know what you would like to see moving forward in the off season. Is there a particular thing that you would like to hear from me, like a technical or mental thing? What sort of content would you like to see? And again, thanks for being with me on this channel this year. And again, congrats to Max for the World Championship, McLaren for the Constructors Championship as well. Thanks again for watching. I'll see you in the next one.